Hello there. Today I'm taking a look at a wine from the Alsace region of France. So this is Domaine Zind Humbrecht Zind, and this is the 2020 vintage of this. Now this is a wine whose label actually has to exploit a legal loophole. The wine's a blend comprising 1/3 of a variety called Auxerrois and 2/3 of Chardonnay, with the Chardonnay coming from Zind Humbrecht's Clos Vinspool vineyard. Now Chardonnay is not a grape variety permitted for still wines in the Alsace appellation, and therefore this wine has had to be labelled as a Vin de France. You'll see that designation on the bottom of the bottle there. Going further than that, you're not able to put the vineyard name on the label of a Vin de France. Similarly, you can't put a vintage. So it's worth understanding that this wine is marked with a Z, then there's a picture of a barrel, there's another Z, and another picture of a barrel. Now the uninitiated might think that that's a 2020, a vintage, and possibly it's not a coincidence, but as I say, you can't put a vintage on a Vin de France, and therefore we have to read Z barrel, Z barrel. Now Domaine Zind Humbrecht was founded as recently as 1959, when Leonard Humbrecht married Genevieve Zind. Now both of these families had been wine producing families, with the Humbrechts tracing their winemaking history back to 1620. Today, the 42-hectare domain is run by their son Olivier and his wife Margaret. The estate has been run organically and biodynamically since they began converting in 1988. They've been certified by EcoCert since 2000 and by Biodivin since 2002. And I think it's fair to say that Olivier Humbrecht has been a leader amongst France's biodynamic winemakers. Clos Vinspool is a southeast facing slope at what is quite a high altitude for Alsace, about 350 metres above sea level. The southeast facing slopes are protected from harsh north winds by the proximity of the Vosges Mountains. The soils here are a shelly limestone, something which has the German name of Musselkalker. And these soils are soft enough that it enables the vines to get their roots very, very deep into the earth, which allows them to mitigate any effects from the relatively heavy rainfall that this high altitude site has. The Humbrechts bought Clos Vinspool in, I believe it was 1988, and in 1989 they started replanting. And part of their replanting involved the western part of the Clos, where they planted Chardonnay because they felt that that was a better blending partner for the Auxerrois than Pinot Blanc, which would have been their other alternative. Evidently the Auxerrois grows in a site opposite the Clos Vinspool. Because of its altitude, Clos Vinspool tends to be one of the last terroirs to be harvested, but because of its altitude, even the fact that it's being harvested late means it gets very little botrytis, so it tends to be really clean fruit that's harvested. Everything is picked by hand, and at the winery the fruit is very gently pressed. The domain makes the point that they have 3 pneumatic presses, specifically so that they can take as long as they want over pressing to ensure lovely clean juice. Fermentations here are done entirely with indigenous yeasts, and actually Olivier's approach is very much to let the yeasts proceed as they wish. So they don't tend to worry too much if fermentations slow or stop. Fermentation for this wine, for instance, went on for a whole year until it finished dry. And that's one thing that's worth noting about Domaine Zind Humbrecht, in terms of that they do actually pop on the bottle here what they call an indice, and this is an indice 1 wine, so it's a dry wine. I believe it's a scale of 1 to 5. My understanding is that fermentation goes on in temperature controlled old oak foudre, and the wines are kept on their fine lees right up until the stage where they come to be bottled. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? Starting with the colour, there we've got a pale to medium yellow colour. Swirling it, the wine seems relatively viscous, it's readily throwing tears on there. The alcohol content is marked as 13% on the label, and we know it's a dry wine. The aromas have a clean, fresh minerality. There's a citric note, almost a delicate saline hint, although that's not hugely pronounced. It's clean, it's fresh. There are perhaps some delicate floral notes and hints of apple and stone fruit, but really it's a lean mineral elegance that comes to the fore on the nose. palate is pungent. There's really good fresh acidity, followed up by sort of like toasty notes, which have a slightly rounded, almost slightly honeyed nature. There's a mid-weight on the back palate, and that's this lovely fruit intensity. There's a tiny touch of sort of caramel butterscotch, quite a rich creaminess. And yet through this all, you've got this acidity with fresh citric notes and underpinned by a mineral nature. It's giving the wine really good length. It does leave it quite lean and fresh, and what lasts is this feeling of elegance. This is not a weighty, rounded, tropical Chardonnay style wine, which is much more a wine driven by tension and nervosity. It's quite exhilarating, it's lasting really well. It's a wine that's coming out for 5 years of age, and yet it still seems youthful and vibrant. I would be quite happy leaving that in the cellar for another 4 or 5 years before I came back to it. I think maybe the fruit has the potential to fill out a little more behind the relatively angular acidity. And yet at the same time, wine has excellent persistence. The blend here of Auxerrois and Chardonnay is really quite on the elegant end of the spectrum of Chardonnay style wines. Its acidity would make it a fantastic partner for a wide variety of dishes. It would very happily pair lighter meals, and yet at the same time it's got the ability to cut through richer, creamier sauces and things like that. And I think the mineral nature would pair brilliantly with things like goat's cheeses and that sort of thing. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have, do please press the like button. That would be fantastic. If you'd like to watch more of our videos, do please sign up and follow our YouTube channel. And by subscribing, you can also set yourself an alert, and that way you can be notified every time we publish a new video. If you have any friends you think might like to watch the video, do please feel free to pass it on to them. And if you have any comments, please pop them in the comments box below. We'd love to hear what you think about the wines we're looking at, the tastings we're doing, or anything else that relates to that. I will of course leave a link in the box below to the Wine Searcher webpage for this vintage of this wine, so that you can find out where it's available near you, what its pricing is, and there's plenty of other detail on those pages about winemaking, the region, the grape varieties, comparing different vintages of this wine, and there are charts there so you can follow its pricing over time, and also look at reviews by critics and by other users on the site. So thank you once again for watching, and I do hope you'll make some time and come and join us for another tasting in the very near future. Until then, bye for now.